What's really happening with personal health understanding? The common story is that AI is helping people get medical advice, and doctors like me are worried about misinformation. But the reality is much bigger than that. We may be living through the biggest transformation in how humans understand their own health since, well, the invention of modern medicine itself. And I'm not saying that lightly. In this video, I'm going to share what I've learned personally about this transformation. First, why the shift from Dr. Google to Dr. AI is fundamentally different from anything that's come before. And second, what I discovered when I downloaded my own genetic data and ran it through an AI system, including some findings that genuinely surprised me, even as a physician. And third, what this means for all of us. The opportunity, the risk, and why I believe every person should be thinking about this right now. Let me be honest with you. This gets personal. I'm going to share my actual genetic findings, things I've never talked about publicly before. Let's dive in. I was in a client meeting recently, a room full of people in a healthcare benefit space, and we got to talking about how patients interact with their doctors now. And someone said something that stuck with me. They said 20 years ago, when you went to the doctor and whatever they told you, that was just it. That was the truth. There was no way to verify it, no way to research it, unless you had access to a medical library and knew how to read medical journals. You just trust it. Then came Google. Then came smartphones and Wi-Fi everywhere, including in a doctor's office. And people started walking into appointments with printouts. Doctors started calling it cyberchrondia. Patients convinced they had rare diseases because they had Googled their symptoms. And you know I'm right, we've all done it. But here's the thing that jumped out to me. That was still just information retrieval. You searched, you got links, you read, you often got confused or scared. The information asymmetry between you and your doctor was narrowed, but it was still massive. What's happening now is different. 230 million people ask ChatGPT health questions every week. That's according to OpenAI. And it's not just, what's this rash anymore? People are uploading their lab results or connecting their Apple Health data. They're running their genetic data through an AI system. They're doing research on their own bodies. And for the first time in human history, the average person has access to an analytical capability that can hold more medical context than any single human brain ever could. The common story is that AI health tools are just better Google, faster search, cleaner answers. But here's what's actually happening. We're moving from information retrieval to genuine health intelligence. Let me explain what I mean. When I was a dermatology resident, I spent 40 to 50 hours a week, every week, reading and memorizing obscure medical diagnoses. Rashes I might only see once in my career. I learned about something called Grover's disease. I learned about dermatitis herpetiformis, pityriasis rubra-pilaris, and dozens of other conditions that sound like they were made up for a medical drama. And here's the thing. I had to hold all of that in my brain. There was no system that could correlate symptoms, patient history, risk factors, and rare presentations in real time. Now, Claude and ChatGPT have launched dedicated healthcare features. They can ingest your medical records, your fitness data from your Apple Watch, your lab results, your genetic data, and synthesize all of it. Not just search for similar symptoms, but actually synthesize it. In January of 2026, Anthropic launched Claude for healthcare. A few weeks later, OpenAI had launched ChatGPT Health. Both systems can now connect to your health records and your fitness apps. They can explain your lab results in plain language. They can detect patterns across your metrics over time. They can prepare questions for your next appointment with your doctor. And critically, they're designed to know what they don't know. They're not replacing your doctor. They're preparing you to have a better conversation with your doctor. So the key insight is this. For the first time, patients can show up to an appointment with genuine understanding of their own health context. Not just printouts they don't fully understand, but actual synthesized intelligence about their own bodies. Now, let me tell you what actually happened when I applied this to myself. Because talking about this in the abstract is one thing, but living it, it's another. 8 or 9 years ago, my daughter gave me a kit called 23andMe for Christmas. And I'll be honest, it sat on my desk for 3 months before I did anything with it. I was worried about privacy, who's going to have this data, what happens if it gets hacked. As a physician, I probably overthought it. But eventually I did this cheek swab and I sent it in. It was interesting. It told me I had some cardiac risk factors. It surfaced some distant relatives around the world who were also in the system. Fortunately, no surprise children. And then 23andMe went bankrupt. This happened in March of 2025. Suddenly, 15 million people's genetic data was potentially up for sale. The California Attorney General issued alerts telling people to delete their data. People panicked. I realized I should probably download my raw data before who knows what could happen to it. So here's what I actually did. I downloaded my raw 23andMe file, 620,000 genetic markers. It's called SNPs. It's a text file, basically rows and rows of letters, A, T, G's, and C's. But then I ran it through Promethease, which is a tool that cross-references your genetic data against a database called SNPedia. It's $12. It takes about 15 minutes to generate a report. And suddenly, I had 23,679 annotated genotypes, meaning for almost 24,000 of my genetic markers, there was published research about what they might mean. But I didn't stop there. I stored the data on my home server, a little mini PC running in my office, and I used Claude Code, Anthropic's AI coding tool, to build an analysis pipeline. I pulled in ClinVar, which is the NIH's database of clinically significant genetic variants. I pulled in PharmGKB, which is a database specifically about how your genetics affect drug metabolism. And then I asked Claude to synthesize it all. Here's what I learned about myself, and I'm sharing this publicly for the first time. Cardiac genetics, I have about a 3-time risk factor for atrial fibrillation, multiple variants pointing in the same direction. I've been on a statin since age 40 that was based on family history, and now I understand the genetic basis for why that matters. Pharmacogenomics, this one is critical. I carry a CYP2C9 variant that makes me an intermediate metabolizer of warfarin. That's Coumadin, the blood thinner that's combined with the kind of variant I have. If I ever needed warfarin for AFib, I'd need a significantly reduced dose. Think about that. If I developed atrial fibrillation and a doctor prescribed a standard dose of warfarin, I could have a serious bleeding complication because I can't metabolize it normally. That is actionable genetic intelligence. Prostate cancer. I carry a genetic marker that's associated with a lower PSA reading. Now, on the surface, that's a good thing. Who wants a high PSA? But I also carry a variant that if I were to develop prostate cancer, it could be a more aggressive type. What a paradox. My normal-looking PSA might be masking something that needs earlier screening. Family connections. My father had an abdominal aortic aneurysm in his 70s. I found genetic markers associated with a AAA risk in my own DNA. My father had glaucoma. I have glaucoma risk variants, and I've already been diagnosed with early glaucoma. These weren't surprises in the sense of I had no idea. They were just confirmations. My family history was being validated at the molecular level. But there were also things that were genuinely relieving. I don't carry the APO4 Alzheimer's risk variant. My parents both lived to their 90s with no dementia. Now I know it's not just luck, it's probably genetics. So here's the thing that jumped out. Even as a physician, I understood my own health better after this analysis than I ever had before, especially in the last 20 years. I now have what I call a pharmacogenomic card, a list of how many genetics affect drug metabolism that I can share with any prescribing doctor. That didn't exist for me 5 years ago. Now it does. Now, I need to be honest about the limitations because this isn't magic. There are real concerns. First, do you really want to know? I talked about not having the Alzheimer's gene, but what if I had? Would I really want to know that information? Some people might not want to know, and that's a legitimate choice. Test about 620,000 genetic markers out of the approximately 3 billion base pairs in your genome. That's 0.02%. It's like reading every 5,000th word in a book and trying to understand the plot. For common risk factors, it works reasonably well, but for rare structural changes or comprehensive risk scoring, you need more. That's why I just ordered the 30x whole genome sequencing test from a company called Nucleus. 30x means every position in the genome will be read an average of 30 times for accuracy. Instead of 620,000 data points, I'm going to now have 3 billion. This will let me calculate polygenic risk scores. That's a composite score across hundreds or thousands of variants for a single condition. So instead of knowing I have a 3-time risk for AFib from this one marker, I can ask, taking into account my 18 years on a statin, my protective cardiac variants and other genes that I have, and my risk variants, what's my overall cardiovascular risk? That's precision medicine. My 23andMe kit sat on my desk for 3 months because I was worried about privacy. And then the company went bankrupt anyway. I made a choice to upload my genetic data to AI systems for analysis. I'm comfortable with that, but not everybody will be. There's no federal law specifically protecting genetic data from being sold. That may surprise you. HIPAA doesn't apply here. GINA only protects employment and insurance discrimination. It doesn't stop the data from being collected or transferred. You need to make an informed choice about what you're comfortable with. AI systems can find patterns, but not all patterns are meaningful. You can go down rabbit holes chasing statistical associations that might be just noise. That happens with any research, by the way. It's not unique to AI, but the speed at which you can spiral is much faster now. So the key insight is this. These tools are powerful, but they require judgment. They augment your relationship with healthcare providers, but they don't replace it. So let me pull all this together. We're living through a transformation in how humans understand their own health. It's not just better Google. It's genuine analytical intelligence applied to your own body, your genetics, your data. For the first time, the average person can have synthesized contextual understanding of their health that was simply impossible before, even for physicians. I discovered things about my own genetics and the AFib risk, the Warfarin metabolism, the prostate screening implications that will shape how I manage my health for the rest of my life. For anyone interested in their own health, and that should be everyone, the opportunity is really profound. You can understand your body at a level simply unavailable to previous generations. Privacy concerns are real. False confidence from my outputs is real, and there's a learning curve. But I believe the upside massively outweighs the downside. This inspired me to go deeper. I ordered my full genome sequence. I built analysis pipelines on my own home server. I created a living health protocol document that will synthesize all of my data. I'm not a bioinformatician. I'm a dermatologist and a benefits consultant. But with these tools, I can do analyses that would have required a PhD a decade ago. That's the transformation. If this resonated with you, subscribe. I'm going to keep sharing what I learn as I get my whole genome results and build out more of this personal health AI stack. And if you want the full write-up, including links to the tools I mentioned, step-by-step instructions for downloading your 23andMe data, and maybe some insights on my own personal pharmacogenomic card, I've got that on my Substack, links in the description. Thanks for watching, take care of your health, and I'll see you on the next one.